Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Meet the Leaders. It isn't it, this is the first ever session which we are introducing amongst the law students to meet and greet and discuss their issues and challenges with the law experts, legal experts, and who are the leaders in their field. According to this session, we are in this session. It is the first ever session that this is a new initiative of Peace and Justice Network, and PGN will invite nationally international leaders in justice and human rights sectors to interact with law students from different university in live session on every Sunday at 7 p.m. It will be a good way. It's a good platform in which students will be able to discuss their issues, talk about their challenges, talk about their issues, and get guidance from the legal experts. And in our very first episode, we have invited our Fulbright specialist, Mr. Fred Rooney, the pioneer of the legal incubator model in US and many parts of the world. Mr. Rooney has a very vast and a very versatile background. He's a law graduate himself, and he's known as the father of incubator. Fred Rooney has a marvelous achievement and has been the pioneers of one of the stone setters of the incubator centers, and he has also established an incubator center here in Pakistan for the first time across the Asia. I will welcome Fred Rooney, and he will be discussing more about himself and his achievements. We will be discussing more about his achievements and his. We will be discussing more about him shortly. Hi, Fred.
How are
How
you?
are you doing?
All right, thank you.
I'm good. I'm good. Along with us, we have also called upon six students, law graduates from different universities across Pakistan. We have with us Mr. Hamdullah. Mr. Hamdullah is from Quetta. We have Mr. Sandeep Chawla. Sandeep Chawla is from Islamabad. He's from Qaid Azam University. We have Khadija Naeem. Khadija Naeem she's doing her LLB from University of London. She is also an alumni of SOAS. Hi, Khadija. We have with us Namra. Namra is from International Islamic University. She's also from Islamabad. And then we have Sabir Shah. Sayyid Sabir Shah is from Quetta. I welcome you all to the show, and it's really very great to have you all students from across Pakistan to have you in our program. Khadija and Nimr, can you please unmute your mic so that we can also hear you? And I will mute it for you guys. Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
So I will start off by our very honorable guest that we have today, the leader which we have today, Mr. Fred Rooney. Mr. Fred Rooney, I would like to ask about your achievements and what motivated you to start the legal incubator, and what are your interest areas, and what do you think is your the greatest achievement, and what you feel proud about yourself?
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to reconnect. It brings back amazing memories I had of the time that I spent in Islamabad up until 2017, 18, 19, 20. No, it was 2018. I think that was my last time that I was back in Pakistan. But I think what motivated me to do what I do is the fact that, just like the law students who are part of this panel, when I got out of law school, I didn't know how to practice law. And the reason I didn't know how to practice law is because law schools historically around the world don't teach you how to practice law. And so unless you get a job once you get out of law school as a fresh attorney or a graduate, it's very hard to develop the skills that you need if you want to create your own law practice. And fortunately, when I decided to do that, I did it with a friend, Michelle. We opened up a practice about a year after I got out of law school. And so we were at a tremendous disadvantage because not only did we not really have strong professional development as lawyers, we opened up a law practice in Pennsylvania, and we didn't really understand that a law practice is a business, and that unless you have business skills, it makes creating a sustainable and economically sustainable law practice very difficult. So we were disadvantaged on two levels. We didn't really know how to practice law because we didn't have mentors, we didn't have anyone to help us. And we also wanted to create a law practice with a very strong social justice commitment. So that's a little bit of the backdrop. What I have to also tell everybody who's listening is that in the United States, the vast majority of people in this country have no access to justice because, like in Pakistan, they simply can't afford it. And so I went to law school not necessarily to make a lot of money, but I went to law school because I had a deep commitment to social justice. And I could see in my own community how people who had privilege, people who had access to family members who were lawyers or judges, it made it so easy. But if you didn't have that, you were at a big disadvantage. And so, my primary reason for going to law school was to help people who didn't have a voice because they were historically never allowed to have a voice. And I think if you're looking at the news or you're watching CNN, you probably have a pretty good idea of who I'm talking about in the US. Primarily Black and Latino people living in this country have never really been able to access the legal system like most other people could because they just, as I mentioned, they don't have the resources to retain lawyers. And, I remember when I first started out, people were charging $125, and I thought that was outrageous because it was so expensive. But today, people getting out of law school are charging $250, and lawyers charge $300, $400, $500 an hour. And so you can imagine that for most people who are struggling to keep their families fed, it's impossible to be able to reclaim a right or undo an injustice that's been done to you, because unless you know how to maneuver in the legal system, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. And so I understood that. And as time went on, we developed our skills, and we, I have to say, thank God, we created an economically strong practice, and we developed our professional skills. So we were good lawyers, but I always say I would not wish the experience on my worst enemy, because it was a very, very difficult process. So I don't want to keep talking, but as years went on, I was able to I went from the law practice after 12 or 13 years, and I went back to legal education. But I didn't go to teach students. I went back to the City University of New York in New York City, of course. And the idea was to teach graduates like myself 13 years before who had a deep, deep, deep desire to make their society better and more just and more equal, but they didn't have the skills. Now, I had developed them over 12 or 13 years, so I think I had a pretty good knowledge of how to be able to help people like myself who wanted to do it and just needed a helping hand. And there are so many young people in the US, and my experience in Pakistan confirms that there are so many young people in Pakistan. In Latin America, I've been to Africa, Australia, all over Europe. There are so many young people who want to change the world. They want to use their privilege and their education to make their societies stronger, to make them more fair, more equal, but they just don't know how to do it. And so for the first time in the history of the US legal education, and I think it's probably the first time in the history of legal education anywhere, the law school where I graduated from decided to create programs to train our graduates. There was nothing like it before that anywhere, because usually you graduate from law school and that's it. But we at CUNY, City University of New York, CUNY, decided that people like who wanted to go into law to increase access to justice deserved to be helped. And I went back, and because I had the skills, I was able to start a network that started with 10 lawyers, and then 20, then 100, then 200, 300. People were really desperate to learn how to create law practices with a deep social commitment. And so we knew that it worked. But about 7 years later, I started a little tiny program in New York for 9 lawyers, and we brought them under one roof so we could train them, in a more systematic or methodical way. And overnight, it became very successful. The New York Times did a story on it. And then law schools and bar associations all over the US began to look at us because we were the pilot program, the first of its kind anywhere. They started calling me and saying, could you come to California? Can you come to Chicago? Can you come to Miami? Can you come to Minneapolis? I mean, all over the country, people were very excited about incubators because it trained their graduates and helped to fill a void in the American legal system. And the void was because there were not enough lawyers who cared more about people than they cared about money, period. I mean, that's the cut to the chase. And so all of a sudden I started seeing law schools and bar associations develop programs and more young people coming into the programs to be educated so they could go back to their communities and be able to help people who were really in desperate need of legal support, legal representation. And so that happened in 2008, 2009, 2010. The numbers started growing. And so today there are about 70 incubators across the US. And then I'm just going to end by saying that in 2012-13, I took the model that was successful in the US and went to the Caribbean, to the Dominican Republic, to see if it could be replicated outside of the US. And we did replicate the program. It was very successful. While I was there, I met somebody who was working in the Dominican Republic, an American, and she told me that she was leaving her job and she was going to start working in Islamabad. So sort of like kiddingly, I said, okay, well, I'll see you in Islamabad. Now, I had never been to Pakistan before. I have lots of Pakistani friends, and I had tremendous respect for my Pakistani friends and their families and for Islam. And I thought to myself, wow, if there's a place that I could go now and see if it works, hey, New York to Islamabad seems like far away, but once you get on a plane and you wake up, you're there. And so I was very blessed to meet Raza, and he was at another organization at the time, but he is now the executive director and the founder of Peace Justice Network. And I met Faiza. And I also then met amazing young Pakistani law graduates. And it proved to me that what I always believed, that no matter where you go on the globe, on this planet, if your heart is in the right direction and your desire is to help people and live the life that we were taught to live, whether we're Christians or Muslims or Hindus or whatever, all of the great religions teach us that we are here to serve. And sure enough, I got to Islamabad and I found young people who were very committed to that concept. And we started the first incubator in Asia. First, of course, the first one in Pakistan, and it was very, very successful. And I know that even after it ended sooner than we had hoped. The young people in the program were committed to using the skills that they developed and the knowledge that they developed in the incubator to continue to do really wonderful things for people who were really in need. And specifically, I could focus on each one of them and tell you how great they are. But the thing that really touched me the most was that the women of the incubator, as reported by the BBC, maybe I can send a link and you can see it. The women of the incubator came together and realized that Pakistani women had particular issues that men didn't necessarily have to face. And so they came together and they created a way of reaching out to women so that women were comfortable coming to women lawyers, not necessarily to male lawyers, and dealing with issues of domestic violence or whatever. And when I finally left Pakistan, I realized that I had been blessed beyond my wildest imagination by having had the privilege as an American to spend time with people like Raza, people like Faiza, and all of the young people who were part of the incubator. and then took the model and continued to work in different parts of the world. We just opened an incubator in Bulgaria a number of months ago, and it's the first one in Eastern Europe, and it really focuses on the needs of the Roma communities. I don't know if people are familiar with Roma. The Roma communities, the non-politically correct term for Roma, and I don't even like to say it, but most people don't understand it unless they hear it, are the gypsy communities. And they're, as you may know, they left the subcontinent of mostly out of India, and then made their way to Europe. And for 500 years, they were enslaved. And so the Roma communities throughout Europe are incredibly underserved. They have the highest rate of unemployment, the highest rate of the lowest education. Because they've been historically kept out of society, of becoming part of the mainstream of society. They've had to live in ghettos. They've had to live marginalized. They have, they're they have a stigma against them by most non-Roma. And to me, they were the people who I thought really deserved the helping hand, because most of them, almost all of them, had nobody in their family who had ever gone to high school or graduated from high school. So not only were they the first high school graduates, but they were the first law school graduates. And we started a great program back in December, and unfortunately the pandemic hit, and so everything is now being done online. But it's the same. I met the same kind of young people in Bulgaria that I had met in the Dominican Republic or in Pakistan. They were young Roma Bulgarians who desperately wanted to create a better society. And they just needed a helping hand. And so, coming full circle, I think, and I say, inshallah, that we will get funding for me to continue to work with Raza and PJN and Faiza, and can do work virtually, because I'm in the States and travel isn't going to open up anytime soon. But my hope is that we can continue to create programs in Pakistan that help people like you, all of you who are law students. If your heart is right, if you care about the people in your community, if you have a problem with the fact that so few people in Pakistan, just like in the US, don't have access to justice, if you believe in the concepts of democracy where equality and fairness should reign, should be prominent, we can't change the world necessarily as an individual, but we can certainly change the lives of people who really struggle for justice. And I am privileged beyond my imagination to be here talking to you today, because all I can do is I can hope and pray that something in you as law students will turn into a deep commitment as lawyers to do more than just make money. Life is very short. We have a very short period of time to be on this earth. But in that period of time, we can have dramatic impacts on the lives of people who struggle, people who are marginalized, vulnerable communities. And I think that when I leave this earth, I could probably feel good about the fact that I didn't change the world. But during the time I was here, I was able to make life better for people. And, since we are privileged, all of us are privileged just by virtue of being educated, I think we have a duty to do that. But my guess is that all of you, as we say here, I'm probably preaching to the choir, because you all understand. I think you all understand that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on a call at 7:00 on Sunday. You would be out there trying to make money. There is a way to balance the need to do good and the need to do well. You cannot do well. You can't do good in your community unless you're not doing economically well. So as lawyers, you need to make money. You need to have money for your families. You need to be able to after you're working so hard, go on vacation. You need all of the things that really most people hope to have: a home, vacation, a car. But that should not be at the cost of people who struggle because they can't find compassionate lawyers. And I believe in my heart that you are the compassionate lawyers who can change Pakistan one person at a time. And so, Faisa, thank you so much for reconnecting. We haven't been even on screen. I haven't seen you. I've seen pictures of you and your baby,
Yeah.
your beautiful baby. And
Yes,
so,
it's been a long time that we
yeah.
weren't.
So thank
But
you
look,
everybody for
we're
listening.
here.
Huh?
No, you're welcome. Well, you're not going anywhere. You're still here
No,
with us,
no,
and everyone has questions for you. So I'm going to put another question for you, and then we will
sure.
proceed on by taking questions from each one of them. Okay, my question is, in this pandemic, in this COVID-19 going on, what are the emerging challenges and issues do you think that law students have faced or they are facing? And do you think that digital inclusion or technology, how can that be, those skills been taught to the law students? Are they the need of time, or are such sessions that we are conducting, are these the need of time? What are your suggestions and recommendations in this
Well,
area?
I think that the kind of information that
And
this,
also, don't forget to highlight the issues and challenges that the students there faced during this COVID-19 period.
yeah. Well, the issues that they face here are probably similar. Here, unfortunately, people can't, to become a lawyer, you have to take the bar exam. And usually the bar exam is given after you graduate in July. But because of the pandemic, they've not been able to take the bar exam. And until you take and pass the bar exam, you cannot be licensed to practice law. And so they're really in limbo because they've graduated, but they haven't taken the bar. And so they're stuck. And it's very sad because young people, a lot of them were expecting to get out of law school, take the bar, pass the bar, and get a job. But a lot of employers won't hire someone until they're licensed. So it's it's a catch-22. So with respect to what I would love to do, if we can spend some time, is I'd like to hear, instead of having people necessarily ask me questions, I'd like to find out from everybody what the reality is. And if everybody could just talk very briefly, we could use the time. The other thing is, I want to say that this is only the first, hopefully, of many conversations we can have. So
Exactly.
virtually, I do believe that incubators, even before the pandemic in the United States, began to realize that it didn't make sense to simply have the traditional model of a space for 10 lawyers, right? It was expensive, and that so much energy was being put into training 10 people. We found that virtually you could train 40 or 50 people using the same amount of energy as you're using for 10.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
what also, and Raza is the best person to talk about this, we were really confined to Islamabad in terms of programming. And because of the size of Pakistan and the needs all over the country, PJN to me is the number one organization in Pakistan that reaches out to every corner of the country. And so if we had known when I was there what we know now, chances are we would have created a virtual incubator that would have connected lawyers and law students from all over. And I think what you're doing, Faiza, is actually the beginning of what will be virtual training, because all of the law students can learn
Yes,
more.
exactly. It's like stepping in the right direction.
Yeah, and they'll learn more practical, they'll get more practical knowledge out of these sessions than they may get sitting in a classroom. And the other thing is, the students have the ability to help shape what it is we talk about. This is not me standing up in front of a class and lecturing, or you doing the same. You all of you collectively have the ability to shape your own realities. And so it's so important for you to be part of the development of virtual programming. And that is what Raza and I are in the process of trying to get a grant to be able to create virtual incubators in Sindh and in different parts of Pakistan. So hopefully,
best of luck for that.
Yeah.
We're all in it together. Okay, let's go to the second session and the second part of the session, and that is we will take some input from. We will discuss the issues and challenges from the students we have here. I don't know, because of the rain or something, our connection here in Pakistan it's very weak. And so that's why some are having the video issue as well. But let's start off by with Hamdullah. Hamdullah, will you please highlight what are the challenges you faced? What are, as a law student during the COVID-19 period? What were the I mean, what challenges or what issues did the law student face as in Quetta? And secondly, you can ask one question from Fred as well. And okay, we can do the question answer session later on. First, let's just discuss about the issues, and then we'll
Right,
proceed on.
right, right, madam. Thank you, Madam Faiza, for inviting me, and we are very lucky to have Mr. Fred with us. We have facing a lot of problems here in Quetta. First of all, we have lost our 7 to 8 months. Uh, from in March, we have to conduct our examination, but due to COVID-19 pandemic, the administration in the university is unable to conduct the examination. Other is the university started online classes because of lack of internet access everywhere in Balochistan, especially. The students are unable to connect to the internet, and they are facing many internet problems. Therefore, they cannot connect to the internet, and they cannot get education as well they can get in classrooms. uh, we have in Balochistan, we have a lot of problems. We have faced, and we are still facing problems in our college and our bars everywhere. Some the main problems we have faced and are facing is, I have noted on the page, that a lack of required library resources. We have our college established in 1971. From 49 years, we didn't have a digital library. From last 2 months before 2 months before our principal made a digital library which can help students in their digital, because everywhere the digital libraries managing digital libraries very well, and we can easily get education and everything from internet, as we can search from books and everywhere. So after 49 years, you can imagine we have just made a single digital library in our college. From last 49 years, all the students were not facilitated from digital library. The second is lack of proper utilization of technology in the learning process. The same I told you that digitalization is 0% in our universities, our colleges, in Balochistan especially. But in Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore, we have seen that everywhere they have managed universities, digital libraries, etc. And the third, the faculty and administration. The first thing I personally observed that is the faculty and administration. They keep difference between semester student and annual students in everything. Especially when the opportunities came to our college everywhere, they prefer semester students to keep and get that opportunities. Now students are unable to even connect to the administration. Even they don't allow them to participate in everything. The fourth and the last is lack of professionally committed cap- competent faculty. Difficult to retain good faculty due to big gaps between the salary of law teachers and corporate law professionals. Because we have visiting teachers in our universities. They are not professionals, because the university paid less money. Therefore, they cannot even they cannot even came to our university, that because we have not getting much salary and money. These are the problems in the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a lot of problems we have faced, that everyone have faced the same problems. These are the problems we
Yes.
are facing in Pakistan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Amdullah. You're right, because of the connectivity issues. I mean, even the student, if they
Yes,
want to go digital, or they want to have the online classes, but because of the connectivity, weak connectivity, they are not able to get it. There should be some, I think there
yes,
must be some effort being done in this area as well. Okay, Sandeep Chawla, can you hear me? Um, Sandeep? Yes. Hi, Sandeep. What do you think as a law student, as a law, what issues or what challenges do you face? And but do you think that how much your school, the legal education that you're getting right now, is preparing you for the your professional practical life?
Ma'am, first of all, thanks to you for providing us a platform like this where we can promote our soft image, especially the lawyers. Since you know that the image of the lawyers is going in the negative aspect since the past years, especially in Pakistan. Besides this, there have been many platforms for the doctors, for the engineers. This is the special platform for the lawyers. So this is such a great initiative, and I'm grateful to Sir Fred who is here for us, and we are learning many things from him with his vast experience. Ma'am, as far the question is concerned, since you know that the being a law student is very hard in Pakistan, uh, a law student has no house job after his graduation. When you are going for the law studies before your universities, you come to listen the questions like वकील तो एक करप्ट होता है, वकील तो एक झूठा होता है. So lawyer has to face those questions and has to fight those questions. And besides this, we are not being given the practical learning, especially in the colleges. So a law student has to fight for himself after his degree. Uh, since yesterday there was the Chaudhry Faisal who was talking like lawyer has to go through, especially the fresh graduates lawyers, that his senior has to get his personal work from him when he has to go through his work, and these are the main problems. And I have request for Sir Fred that since you launched the program for the fresh law graduates like the legal incubators, so I request you to launch a program especially for the undergraduates law students who can learn from the vast experience of the USA. So it will be such a great initiative for the, especially for the students of Pakistan.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Nimra, are you here with us?
Yes, Miss Faiza, can you hear me?
Yes, Nimra. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Nimra
great.
has her paper tomorrow.
Yes,
Best of luck for that. Okay,
thank
Nimra,
you.
can you tell me what challenges or what difficulties did you face during the COVID-19? Or as a law graduate, what do you think what needs to be
Yeah.
done to improve the legal education?
What needs to be done to improve the legal education? I think that starts with universities and the way we are taught law, and I think that will be a very detailed conversation. As so, Fred, he said that the practical work is not taught in the classroom, which is very sad because I was hoping that in the universities in USA or Europe maybe this problem was tackled, but it's very disappointing to know that even there the students are not taught that how are they going to practice the education and the knowledge they've been put inside about law and how to practice it. So I think that's the major problem, that we are only taught law but we don't know how to utilize that knowledge. And that is exactly what I'm facing right now. Like, I have an exam tomorrow which is in Arabic language. I really, Ms. Faiza knows this well, that my Arabic is not good at all. So I face a lot of problems in understanding the subject, and it is practical law, but I only cram it. I can only cram it. I don't understand it. So how will I implement it in a practical sense? So that's a huge problem, and I think that is the reason why we fresh graduates, when we get into house job, we get our internships, or we become an attorney and we were with private firms or in the government firms. The problem remains that we start from literally zero, and our self-esteem just falls down because we have no idea what is going on around us. Also, a few days ago, I came to know that in the Supreme Court there were internships open for clerks. Here, clerks are like internees who work with the associates, the lawyers of the Supreme Court. So that I found that really cool, and I made that my goal that once I'm done with my LB, I will be applying for clerk in Supreme Court. But after a few days, I shared this information with one of my friend. She's already an advocate and she has the license and she's now practicing law. And she told me that she was going to apply for Supreme Court clerk as well. But the problem is that they don't really recognize merit, but they prefer the law students who are coming from privileged families, or maybe who have connection inside the Supreme Court, who have lawyers who they know from their families. So that really disappointed me, and I just thought that maybe there is no opportunities for people who do not have any lawyer in their family. Like I myself, I come from a family where I don't have a single lawyer in my family. Like I have zero legal background. I'm the only first lawyer in my family, and that also a girl. So it makes it a big problem for me, because as Sir Fred mentioned, that here women tend to be, they're not really encouraged to come into this field. And the first question that I face when I come out of my house and, I talk to people and I tell them that I'm studying law, and they ask me that, are you sure you're going to pursue law? Because this is not really for females, you're a woman. So are you sure you will be practicing law, or are you just doing it for the degree? And I tell them that I'm not doing it just for a piece of paper. I have to practice it. I have to pursue it as a career. And they say, well, then you must leave this country and maybe go to Europe or maybe go to USA, because here you really have no future. And being a female, this is my honest advice to you. So that also really disappoints me. That what is this mentality that if you are a woman you cannot practice law, you're just studying for a piece of paper, you just get the degree and that's it. So I think yes. So the educational system, and then secondly the privilege system, and then the mentality that women cannot pursue the law in the court or in a practical sense. So I think these are three major issues that I have yet faced so far.
Okay, Nimrod, what is your question to? Yes, Fred. Wait, let's listen to what. Yes, Fred.
Yeah, I was trying to hold off from saying anything, but I really appreciated your comments, and what I guess what I wanted to say is that legal education around the world has never been really created to educate people other than the most privileged members of society, any society. And just as you were saying, that if you have an uncle, if you have somebody in your family who's been a lawyer, a father, or who can get you through, use the connections, everything else, then you're out. The chances of you getting a job are much better. And so you can see why they don't necessarily want to make legal education practical around the world, because they know that the people who they really want to focus on, who are the students of privilege, are going to be trained because they're going to be hired as clerks, or they're going to be hired as associates in law firms, and that's where they're taught. But I just want to say that one of the great things about the Pakistani incubator is we know about the house jobs. We know about the fact that you have to comply in order to be licensed in Pakistan to then eventually practice law. But the jobs that they give you oftentimes are filing papers or going out for chai or doing this or doing that, nothing of real substance. And so the wonderful thing about the Pakistani incubator, and Faiza, maybe at some point you could have a group of the lawyers to talk about their experiences. But from the day they got into the incubator, they were learning how to do the kinds of things that students of privilege were learning when they were connected.
We did have our session yesterday, Fred, with the emerging lawyers, and they shared their issues and their point of view.
So
very well.
Really,
I will share the video link with you. You can watch it as well.
That's great. But I mean, it really is. It's incumbent on all of you as law students to understand the reality and don't give up. As a woman, the women of the incubator, as I said, were, for me, the most amazing component of what happened, because they understood the obstacles they were facing. They understood the reality of what it was like being a woman in a male-dominated legal profession, and they didn't have to go to Europe. They didn't have to go to the U.S. They stayed at home, and they were struggling and fighting to be able to achieve inclusion in the legal system. Ensure the respect that they deserve as women lawyers from the courts and from the bar associations, and they really did an amazing job. And so, for the women who are listening, my heart goes out to everybody, but specifically to the women, because I know that it's much more of an uphill battle. So, and good luck with your exam tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Khadija?
That answers my question.
Okay, we'll move on to Khadija. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hi, Khadija. How are you?
I'm good. It's really nice to hear all of you talking about these issues. It feels like no one ever really talks about them, particularly giving them proper time and attention. But like, just to highlight a point Nimra just mentioned about women lawyers, Alhamdulillah, in Pakistan now we are making a progress. We recently had a female judge in the Balochistan High Court. She's the sitting Chief Justice as well. And about the clerkship, I just got done with my degree and I am applying for it. There is obviously, it's not just Pakistan, I think all around the world, and this is the case, and not just law, in every field, that there's a degree of nepotism that exists. But other than that, there is a certain quota for people who have good like contacts and everything. But for the legal system to survive, there are still merit-based slots. And obviously we have to work hard, really hard, and strive for them. It's not that easy, but there is still room for people like us who actually have to work for it, who don't really have those contacts. I basically started my degree in Islamabad in TILS. It's a University of London international program. So after my first year, I was of the view, and I met a lot of people, and I was of the view that I can't really work here because of all this, that women can't, and it's not the environment for women to progress and everything. And then a lot of people suggested that I rather do CSS than practice law. And I always wanted to do law, so I transferred. I went to UK for my second year of law, and third year I did that in the UK. But after spending 2 years in the UK shadowing with different lawyers, I then concluded that it's the same almost everywhere. It's not that it's just for us women, it's for everyone. We have to struggle. Law in itself, it's not an easy field. We have to strive very hard for it. So after that, then I returned. Like I just returned like 2-3 months ago amidst this corona situation, realizing that it's equally hard over there as it is in Pakistan. And contacts and everything, obviously it exists over there as well. For us, yes, women do struggle in the sense of the society, the mindset, the customs we have, but I think our judiciary and generally our law practice is making room for women now. Because initially, when 3 years ago I went to the courts, I didn't feel that comfortable, but now I feel that hostile environment that has, that has been eradicated, and a more welcoming environment is present. Now that when I go to court, I've started going to court again. And now when I go to court, I actually feel welcomed. The judges acknowledge you and they appreciate you. I had 3 Supreme Court judges tell me that it's really nice seeing women lawyers in the court. So alhamdulillah, with that, in that sense, Pakistan is progressing. In this sense, as a fresh law graduate, how I am struggling with this is the corona situation, that I couldn't apply for jobs. Obviously, when I graduated, I didn't have any practical knowledge of the field. So, and I only did like what the theoretical work we did in the degree and moot courts. And obviously they did really help. But and I did British law. So when I came to Pakistan, it was comparatively hard for me than other students to have a grip on that. But generally, that's like with applying for jobs, for working with lawyers, I couldn't go out every day. And this virtual experience, it is really helping a lot. In fact, even in the courts of Pakistan, we're having virtual hearings now. So in that sense, it's very helpful. And I'm very grateful to you all for this platform. Thank you.
You're welcome. Khadija, while Fred is disconnected, and I don't. I want to ask you, what are the recommendations do you give to the law students or I think Fred is coming here. If Fred joins us in, then you can give your question, Khadija. Okay, I think he's here. So I think now it's time that we can have one question from you, Khadija. If you have a question from Fred.
So basically, Fred, and from what I have concluded, he's more of a humanitarian in the legal aspect, and that's something really nice. And we need more people like him. But generally, like for me at this point, because I'm struggling with getting a job, and I have applied for clerkship, and I do think that there's still hope that I do get it on merit. But we in Pakistan, there's one platform where on merit is something we always qualify for if we do an administrative job and do the CSS exam. For me, I always wanted to do law, but at this point, I'm very uncertain. So, what do you suggest? Because the end goal is to help people, and administration is the execution of law. Law is the understanding, and in the administration, they execute what we preach, basically. So, what do you think is a better way to achieve that goal?
Um, well, I believe that when you talk about being a humanitarian, that if your humanitarian instincts are what you follow, I can guarantee you'll be successful in whatever you do. You may not have the heftiest bank account, but you will be happy and satisfied because you know that you're not only are you helping people, but you're also making money. And so one of the unfortunate things that I see is that a lot of young people around the world go to law, they graduate with law degrees, and then they leave the profession because for the same reasons that you're talking about. There are lack of opportunities. And so what I really believe is that you can create your own opportunities. And when you have an organization like PJN available and able to help young lawyers who are falling through the cracks, it's such a tragedy when someone with a great commitment to justice and humanitarian needs goes to law school, gets out of law school, and then decides to go into banking or teaching because they just can't get a job. You can make jobs. You could create your realities. All of the lawyers in the initial incubator probably felt the same way that you do. And I travel 125,000 miles around the world a year, not so much since the pandemic, but everybody, including young graduates in the States, feel like they're not going to be able to get past the obstacles.
Yeah.
But if you hang in there and you're persistent and you have faith and you don't give up, you will succeed. And it may not be in the way that you currently think will guarantee your success. But because there is so much need in a country like Pakistan, and I say that in all due respect, I'm not saying that there's not tremendous need in this country, as you all know. But what the countries need are people like you who care about justice, who went into law not necessarily because, it was just a profession. And so I beg you to hang in there. Don't only look at the kind of traditional ways of getting a job. There's a new economy being created around the world. And so a law practice for you may not look like going in and being what do they call house what? What's the term? We call them apprentice, or I forget the term. The house, you may think that the way to do it is through the traditional house job, but there are other ways to be able to become lawyers. And it may not be like just getting to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody to get you a house job. Yeah. Be creative, look at the new realities, look at the new normal, which is going to be electronic, and understand that you got to think a little bit outside of the box for opportunities that you may not be aware of, but that are there.
Okay.
Right. Khadija, I
Uh,
hope that answers your question. Now we'll move on to Sandeep. Can we have your question, please?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, everyone. Sulfur, since you know that there is a big difference in studying the law and practicing the law, there are many law students, especially in Pakistan, who are facing the problem in the practicing the law. They cannot practice the law properly. So, how do you think that we can tackle this problem?
Well, I think that if PJN and myself and some others are able to convince funding sources to allow us to create new models of incubators, that may be may provide an opportunity for you that doesn't currently exist. I feel fairly optimistic that we will be able to do that. So the fact that you're all connected with me through PJN, my number one suggestion is that you stick like glue to PJN, because I don't know of any organization in Pakistan that is as creative, as able to to look at realities and create new opportunities. And so just as you need PJN, they need you. And so I think there's a really good symbiotic relationship between law students and PJN, and that I honestly believe in my heart that we may be able in a very short period of time to come up with models that could be potentially supportive for you, Sandeep, and everybody else.
Alhamdulillah,
Thank you so much.
Alhamdulillah, what you're next? Your question, please.
He's muted.
Regulatory bodies in legal education. I personally haven't seen any ease from regulatory bodies during getting legal education. And the second thing, we have facing problems taking bar license. The association takes oath before giving license that you have to oath for them in bar election, and we have facing problems everywhere.
Your first question,
Getting
Alhamdulillah.
education to
Alhamdulillah, आपका पहला question
getting
clear नहीं था?
that what is the role
I'm
of
sorry, what is
regulatory
the
bodies in
role of
legal
what?
education?
Regulatory body.
What is the role of regulatory bodies
Just
in
one more
legal
time, the role
education?
of, what is the role of
Regulatory bodies. When you mean
regulatory body?
regulatory
Okay.
bodies, what do you mean?
Bodies that
What
bar
is the role? The role is to make our lives miserable.
associations.
That's probably the role of regulatory bodies all over the world. They want, because law is I think most legal systems around the world would rather see fewer lawyers than more lawyers, because the fewer there are, the more they can make, the more they can earn. And so they try to put all these obstacles in your path, in our path, because I went through the same kinds of things, in order to be able to not make in order to kind of push us outside of the system. But please don't let them do that. I mean, you've got to outsmart the regulatory mechanisms, and there are a lot of very, very, very creative Pakistanis who understand the reality, but are not willing to just say, okay, well, that's a reality, then we've got to conform to the reality. You've got to challenge the systems to be able to create more systems, especially when you look at the unmet legal needs of Pakistanis. Just as the unmet 70%, 80% of the people in this country don't have access to lawyers. And what does it mean? It means that the regulatory commissions that dictate how to become a lawyer are so antiquated and so pro status quo that they don't really care that much about the fact that most people have no access to justice. And so alhamdulillah, it's up to you, it's up to all of us to create new models. And I honestly believe if in Pakistan, if there's one area where lawyers have been most able to challenge this status quo, it's in judges and lawyers. And so don't ever, give up the thought of using all the God-given talents that you have and the education and the privilege to be able to struggle. Don't be satisfied with the norm. Look to question authority and change the reality so each of our countries becomes much more democratic and fair and equal.
Nimra, you're next.
Thank you.
Sure. Nimra?
Nimra?
Yeah, sorry, my mic is not working.
Yes. What questions do you have for Dr. Fred?
Okay, so I think most of the questions are answered, but I would like to ask that, Mr. Fred, in your opinion, as you have been in this field for so long and you have met different students who are pursuing law, and then you are in this field, you have seen emerging lawyers, what do you think are the pros and cons of this field? Like, what do you think is a good factor to be a lawyer, and what do you think is a bad side to it, of being a lawyer, being in this field? Like, what are the major pros and cons of this field, and what are the things that I should be, like, when I become a lawyer, I should be proud of, and what are the things that I should be aware of, that this can get to me, and I should be aware that these are the things that I should avoid in this field.
Sure.
When practicing. Yes, thank you.
Sure. I really love the question, only because you can probably guess I have pretty strong ideas of how to answer it. Number one, what did I really dislike about lawyering? I hated the adversarial nature of lawyering. Sometimes when I was, in the middle of a battle with opposing counsel, I would think to myself, I should have been a plumber. I should have been a carpenter. I should have done something other than this, because my basic nature isn't to fight. I'm much more of a pacifist than I am as a warrior. And I think that if you're a warrior, law is a great profession because you can knock them down and you can drag them out. I didn't like that. And so I didn't last in terms of litigation and the day-to-day practice of law. I didn't last that long. I think my practice I practiced actively for about 12 or 13 years, and then part-time for another couple of years. What I love about law is that you can make of it anything that you want. And people always tell me, you should write a book. And if I ever wrote a book, I would, not that I would, because today everybody's writing books. And as we say, they're a dime a dozen. But what I would talk about is how you as a lawyer, instead of necessarily feeling like you've got to go into court every day and battle with somebody, you can use your privilege as a lawyer to help people in ways that don't necessarily involve litigation. I helped refugees, I helped immigrants, I helped people who were being abused, women who were being beaten. I mean, having a law degree is really super important. And let me say this, if you decide after a period of time that you don't like it, maybe there's an NGO or there's an organization that does something that really touches your passion. You could always take your skills as a lawyer to another kind of institution and be really very helpful and very successful. But don't give up the idea of doing anything until you get your license to practice. Jump through the hoops, go through the obstacles, put up with all of the kinds of, ups and downs that you got to put up with in order to be able to have, we call it a license to practice, be a certified lawyer. Do that and then see how it goes. And if it doesn't go the way you want, open up your own practice. Start, find your friends and your colleagues who you get along with really well, who share a common passion for justice and desire to help people. If you're women, sometimes women may want to come together to create a female-based law practice. You can be as creative as your mind allows you to be. But if your mind is dictated by your heart, I promise you one thing. And remember 20 years from now or 30 years from now, oh yeah, there was a guy during the pandemic, an American guy who said it. I promise you, if you use your heart and your soul to dictate your life as a lawyer, you will always be successful. That much I know is true.
Okay, one of our viewers have a question for you, Fred. You can see it on the screen as well, if you can see it. It says, what do you suggest for all those lawyers who are new in practice and earning nothing but experience? Due to this, a lot of fresh graduates left their practice in their first or second year due to financial issues. Tell us how to motivate them.
You know, I remember when I got out of law school, I took a job after I passed the bar. I tell this story all the time. And my income was so low that under the federal poverty guidelines in this country, I worked for legal aid, which is, you know, a program for people who are poor. I had one child, and my son was born in my last year of law school. And my daughter was born 16 months later. My income was so low that under the federal poverty guidelines, if I had gone in to get a lawyer through legal aid for free, and you know you would get it if you're poor enough. If I had gone in to legal aid as a lawyer, my income was so low that I would have qualified. And people said to me, "You are crazy." I had connections. I mean, I was born into privilege. My uncle was in Congress, in the United States Congress. My father was an executive. And they said to me, you know, we'll get you a job here. We'll get you in a firm. And I said, I didn't go to law school in order to go work for a firm. I went to law school because I knew just how unfair things were for so many people in this country. But in order to do that, I had to subject myself and my family to a period of time when we relied on public assistance for food. And I was a lawyer. And so I think that if anybody would have given up, at least most lawyers who were raised the way I was in the privilege, if they had gone through that, they would have said, I couldn't even tell my parents that I had to apply for public assistance because I didn't make enough money to feed my kids. But here I, you know, when I talk to Pakistanis, I can be a little bit more open about faith. But if you have faith and your heart is really committed to helping people in a humanitarian way as a lawyer, I don't have a magic wand and I can't say it's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. But if you can stick it out, I mean, I had to stick it out that first year and then I had to go out on my own. But once I did, I was blessed time and time again, because every time you help somebody in need, the blessings come back to you triple-fold. And I don't care what religion is, whether if you have a religion or you are not, I know that either Allah or the universe or whatever it is will take care of you if you are compassionate enough and kind enough and willing to help your fellow human being in need. And so I beg you to not give up. You know, I know financially it's got to be really difficult, but I'm certain that doors will open for you if your heart is in the right place. And as I said, you may not be laughing all the way to the bank after the end of every week, but you will feel such a degree of satisfaction and gratitude for being a lawyer, because you know you're doing exactly what it is that we are called to do as human beings.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred, for answering us that. Fred, I want to ask you before proceeding to other people, what sort of opportunities or what sort of you see as for, I mean, we're talking about lawyers here, but I want to ask you for the students, for the law graduates, what sort of do they have any sort of exposure opportunities, or do they have any sort of scholarship opportunities? Because most of the students are there questioning me, on PMing me, and asking me that they're regarding the opportunities for law students, their exposures opportunities, or any others. That's a thing. So if you can give briefly guide us on what sort of scholarships are available, what sorts
Well, I
of
mean, like,
opportunities for law students are available.
um, when I got out of, I mean, when I got, let me start again. The Fulbright program is a program that has helped me very much over the course of almost the last 10 years. And the Fulbright program in Pakistan is the largest in the world. There are more young people from Pakistan and scholars and professors who come to the US to study. But I know that not only does the US have the Fulbright program, I mean, in Europe, there's Erasmus programs. There are programs. If you're looking to do something outside of Pakistan, and I would hope if you do that it's going to be temporary, so that you do come back and you help in this struggle to make a better society. There are opportunities. In terms of the opportunities on the ground, I'm not exactly sure, but I think that I will come back and reiterate my belief that PJN is probably better apt, and Raza may be better apt at answering the question of opportunities. But I also believe that if they don't exist, they can exist. That collectively, there's so much positive energy and compassion in this particular group. If you all came together, I think the earth would rock. And so, at a time in life when I don't necessarily feel good about a lot of things, especially politics here at home, or the pandemic, or the state of the world, I do feel really strongly about PJN. I always have, and I always will. And I hope that I wish I could answer the question a little bit better in terms of what are the opportunities. I've been away from Pakistan a little bit too long to be really up on what's going on the ground. But you guys are there. Faiza, you're there, and I know how creative you are, and I know how creative Raza is. And so, what I would love to do is I'd like to say, hey, let's take a couple weeks, and let's convene this group again. Let's not make this once and done. For someone like myself who travels all the time, I've got more time on my hands now than I've had ever, probably. And I'm trying to use my time in a constructive way. And there's no better way for me to use it constructively than by being on this call and talking to all of you. And so I want to do it again, and I'm going to leave that up to you to decide whether or not that's a possibility. But if it is, let's reconnect and keep the conversation going, because this conversation shouldn't be once and done. And the more that we communicate, the more the ideas are shared. I'd love to get Raza in this conversation. I'd like to find out from other people who may have some ideas. The more we communicate, the more we network, the greater the opportunities are. And so I'm here, how many thousands of kilometers away, but my heart is with you, my soul is with you, and my respect for all of you and for your country, understanding all the difficulties you as Pakistanis are going through, makes me even more committed to all of you. So hopefully we'll reconvene sometime real soon to keep the conversation going.
Yes, definitely, Mr. Fred. I'm sorry, I think Miss Faiza's line just dropped and she's not with us anymore. Maybe she's trying to reconnect. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anybody else has any questions, I'm happy to. I think how many people there were 4 of us on the call. Maybe people. I don't know. Does it end after an hour? Maybe sometimes they. No, I guess not, because we're still connected. Anybody else want to ask me a question?
It's 9.
It's getting late for you. I'm sorry if you saw me with a cup in my hand. It's only morning here in the East Coast of the U.S., so I was having chai. So I didn't know if that was improper for me to be drinking chai while I'm on a camera, but I figured you'd forgive me if it wasn't. If nobody else has any questions, then as I said, hopefully we can get together again. Inshallah. All right. Can you all hear me?
It's all right.
Yes, inshallah.
From my
Thank
side.
you.
Okay. Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's my pleasure. Take care, everybody, and stay healthy and blessed, and your families too. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.